The sun hung low over Lake Haven, its light fracturing into golden shards across the water. James Carter sat on the dock, his fishing rod resting beside him, the small boat tethered to his family's weathered post bobbing gently. A black man with a quiet strength, James moved with the ease of someone who belonged, his hands steady as he adjusted the line. To him, the lake was more than water. It was memory, legacy, home. But to the Crestwood Homeowners Association, he was an outsider, a problem to be erased. They saw a man who didn't fit their gated world and decided he had to go, unaware that the lake they claimed was his birthright. It began with the sharp clip of footsteps on the gravel path. A trio of HOA members approached, led by Deborah Klein, a woman whose smile masked a steel-edged sense of control. Flanked by Richard, a realtor with a perpetually clenched jaw, and Susan, whose designer sunglasses couldn't hide her disdain, Deborah pointed at James's boat. "This is a private lake," she said, her voice cutting through the evening calm. "You're not allowed to dock here. Pack up and leave." They stood, arms crossed, expecting compliance, their rulebook clutched like a weapon. James didn't waver. He met Deborah's gaze, his dark eyes calm but unyielding, and offered a faint smile. "Is that right?" he asked, his tone soft yet weighted with something unspoken. Deborah bristled, opening her rulebook with a flourish. "It's in the bylaws. Non-members can't use this lake. You're trespassing." Richard chimed in, his voice dripping with condescension. "We don't know who you think you are, but you don't belong here." James leaned back, hands resting on the dock, and said, "You should double-check your records." His words were polite, almost gentle, but they carried a quiet challenge. Susan laughed, a sharp sound that echoed over the water. "Records? We run this place. Move along." They didn't know Colton have imagined that James Carter was no trespasser. Lake Haven wasn't just a scenic backdrop for their fishing tournaments. It was his family's land, deeded to them generations ago through sweat and sacrifice. James had returned to reclaim it, not with shouts or fists, but with the unassailable truth of ownership. The HOA's rules meant nothing on his soil. In their pristine community center, the HOA buzzed with outrage. Emails flew like sparks, each one fanning their indignation. "Who does he think he is?" Susan typed, her fingers slamming the keys. "We can't let him ruin our lake." Richard proposed fines, while Deborah contacted the fishing club president, a blustery man named Paul who treated the lake like his personal fiefdom. They planned to escalate county complaints, police reports, whatever it took to remove James. No one thought to verify his claims. They saw a black man by their lake, and their assumptions wrote the rest of the story. James, meanwhile, was methodical. In his small lakeside cabin, he reviewed yellowed deeds and title documents, his lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Clara, preparing their case. The HOA's threats were noise to him, as fleeting as the ripples on the water. He'd faced judgment before people who saw his skin and decided his place. But Lake Haven was his, and he would protect it with the quiet power of truth. Weeks later, the HOA's smug certainty collapsed. A courier delivered thick envelopes to every member, each one containing a legal notice that hit like a sledgehammer. James Carter, the man they'd scorned, was the sole owner of Lake Haven. Effective immediately, their fishing club privileges were revoked. The dock lease terminated. Private security now patrolled the shores, barring access. The lake, once their playground, was locked away. Chaos erupted in Crestwood. Emergency meetings dissolved into shouting matches. "This can't be legal," Deborah cried, her rulebook useless now. Paul, red-faced, threatened lawsuits, but their attorney, a harried man in a rumpled suit, shook his head. "The deeds are airtight," he said. "He owns it all." The HOA had been so consumed by their prejudice that they'd never checked the county records. If they had, they'd have seen the Carter family's name etched into Lake Haven's history, a legacy older than their neighborhood's iron gates. Their mistake was costly. They'd confronted James on his own land, brandished their bylaws, and threatened him with authorities. Now, their fishing club was dismantled, their docks chained, their picnics a memory. Security guards turned away their boats, and their signs proclaiming Crestwood Fishing Club were torn down. The lake lay silent, its surface a mirror to their defeat. James never raised his voice. He didn't need to. When Deborah, her confidence shattered, approached him days later, She could barely speak. "We didn't know," she mumbled, staring at the ground. James looked at her, his face calm but resolute. "You never bothered to find out," he said, turning back to his boat, the lake stretching before him like a promise kept. As the HOA packed up their gear, their illusions of control in tatters, whispers spread through Crestwood. Some saw James's victory as justice, a righteous stand against arrogance. Others called it vengeance, a power grab by a man they'd underestimated. The truth was simpler. James had defended what was his, not with anger, but with dignity and deeds. The lake was his legacy, and the HOA had learned too late that their rules couldn't rewrite history. The story rippled beyond the lake, sparking debates in coffee shops and online forums. Was James a hero, quietly reclaiming his birthright? Or had he wielded his power too harshly, stripping a community of its traditions? The questions hung in the air, as divisive as they were undeniable. If this tale makes you rethink assumptions or root for the underdog, don't let it pass. Share it with someone who needs to see it. Let it linger, like the still waters of Lake Haven, where truth outlasts every challenge.